Nice. Thank you, Mr. Keller. And Eric, will you take attendance?
Yes, so Valerie's here. I am here. Stephen is here. Daniel Esco, I don't think is here. Heloisa is here. Laura Otmar
She's on her way.
on her way. Okay, and Brittany is here.
Yes, I'm here.
Is Katie here? No.
She won't make it today.
Okay, and Tally is not here. Patty Bloomer. Sean is here. Laura Smith. Denise Johnson. Chantel. And Steve Ibrahim. Okay.
Okay, the next thing that we'll do is move on to item number 3. We're going to do approval of previous minutes from April 18, 2022. You should all see your link and the agenda. We'll take a couple of minutes and go ahead and pull that up and take a look at it. Does anyone see anything that needs to be edited or that we missed or anything? And give me a thumbs up if the minutes look okay. Stephen, are you still reading over them? Eloisa, you're good. Brittany, you're good. Okay. Aaron, are you good with the minutes?
I am, yes. And
Okay.
I'm here as a, I'm obviously not on your committee, so as a general person, parent.
Well, welcome.
So tell me, basically, tell me when you want input and tell me when to shut up.
No. No. Well, I promise we won't tell you to shut up, so. Okay, so if everyone is done with the minutes, I'd like to motion that we pass the minutes from April 18, 2022. Do I have a second?
I second.
Second. Okay.
Okay. Do we need any discussion? Does anyone need to say anything about it? Okay. So minutes from April 18, 2022 have passed. We're going to move on to item number 4, comments from the public. Do we have any comments right now? Aaron, is there anything that you want to discuss in general? This is that moment that the public can comment freely.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thanks. I am sort of interested in the agenda and generally the work of the committee. So here mostly to observe, but I'm not bringing any new agenda item to you.
Okay, thank you. And Laura Smith, I see you just logged on. Hello.
everyone. Sorry I was a few minutes late, but I'm here now.
No worries. Hello. Okay, so if we don't have any more comments from the public, then let's move on to our discussion items. And the first priority we have is our 2022-2023 SIPSA. Mr. Keller, do we want to start with the link that you sent on Wednesday first?
We could. I would like, if we can, I didn't think about this earlier, but can we just have number 5 go to the end? Because I think it'll take us the longest. And, you know, quite frankly, I'm not completely finished with it. And
Okay.
I think we need to have a really long discussion about that, about the possibility of meeting next week, whoever's available.
Okay,
Because I think the first 3 items won't take that long, to be honest.
got it. Okay, perfect. Okay, so we'll tackle item 5 last. Laura Ottomer just logged on. Hi, Laura. So let's move on to item number 6. And do we have any updates on the nut-free policy update? Is that something that I personally would, I know Laura had brought it up. I think it was a really good idea as a site council to possibly push to the board to make Robert Down a nut-free school.
So I did, after, I believe it was after our March meeting, I sent a message out to all the site leaders in our district, and I asked them to bring this topic up at their site councils. Unfortunately, I only received one response from one site, and unfortunately, it was not in favor of doing this. And I think from that, the other sites didn't reach out to me to share if they've discussed this with their site councils. I want to say it was the next night, I think PTA occurred on a Tuesday that month. And I discussed this with PTA. And that was kind of a mix. It was kind of a 50-50 with our own PTA. And there were parents who were definitely for it. And there were parents who were definitely against it. Regardless of that, I do want to thank Laura because she helped us find a speaker that we have a contract to have. Kyle, help me with his last name again, Laura. Dine, okay. Kyle Dine will be coming the second week of school to speak with both our campus and Forest Grove. And he's going to talk about food allergies and bullying around kids that have food allergies. I think obviously it's kind of a two-tiered thing because we've discussed all year the concern about bullying. And obviously, Laura brought to the forefront the concern about having a nut-free policy. It was my hope that we would get feedback from other site councils and that they would be on board to have a discussion about it. And unfortunately, at this point, I just have to report out that I don't think other sites are there. So I will have to just go forward to my management team and say, this is something that we would like to adopt at our school. I don't know if we want to conduct a survey to families to see where they are about the policy and having it adopted. But like I shared with you, earlier in the year, it's something that I'd like to see the entire district adopt and not just Robert Down. That just makes sense to me. I don't see why one school would have it and not any other schools in the district.
Is the, okay, so when you say you reach out to the sites, that's like the Forest Grove and then the middle school and the high school. So
Correct.
You got one response, was at Forest Grove? Not that I'm not saying I don't think middle school and high school matter. I do think that middle school and high school, I think that's a different tier. I think that at the elementary school, in my personal opinion, that's the primary concern. And even if we just focus on Robert Down right now, we could in the future see where Forest Grove stands. We could at least push the issue, write up the letter to the board, what's the worst? They say no, right? Or give us their concerns, and then we can maybe come back to the drawing board. But I think at the elementary school level, I think that it could be a pretty good move. The only reason, like I said, in my experience coming from the East Coast, we came from schools in 2 different states that were both nut-free, completely nut-free schools.
Yeah, we came from a nut-free school also in Maryland.
Brittany?
I do want to say, I think that if we do a parent survey, we need to have some education provided prior. My son has a nut allergy, and I was able to, you overhear parents are like, oh, it's a peanut free, blah, blah, blah. And then when you sit down, you're like, actually, my son's allergic to peanuts, and let me tell you about it. And then they change their mind. So I feel like if we just sent a survey out right off the bat, people that aren't affected by it are less likely to go for it because they think, oh, what a hardship for me. So if you provide education as to why and how actually it's not that much of a hardship, I think we really need to do that first to get the school on board. Otherwise, you're going to have this, I'm afraid you're going to have a lot of angry feedback from a lot of parents. I don't have that education piece, but maybe Laura has a lot of education that she could provide to the parents.
Absolutely, yeah. I have a comment about the peanut issue. As a teacher of the special ed class, I have many students. It's common that kids with autism are very picky eaters. And I will have to say that peanut butter is one thing that many of them do eat. And I have had to keep back my kindergarteners right now eating in my classroom for lunch because of the peanut butter allergy that's going on in kindergarten. So to have it like school wide, I think would be kind of tough for some students in my class. I mean, it's like the peanut butter and jelly sandwich or peanut butter crackers are like the only thing that they're eating for lunch, and maybe like string cheese, and it's the same thing every day. And so I think there might have to be some of that exception for, because otherwise I have a kid who doesn't eat anything else but peanut butter crackers, and that's it, and cup of noodle. And it's like, if I didn't have peanut butter crackers to offer that child, I'd be in a whole lot of hurt. So it's just something to consider, to have it be school wide, but there might be the exceptions, or it's something that we write in kids' IEPs but I think that would be really tough not to have any peanut butter at all, especially in my class for some of my students.
If I could say something really quick too, I know some of the teachers I spoke to were talking about like, how far does this extend? Elementary, middle school, like, do we tell our high schoolers, like, you bring peanut butter, you can, like, how far does that dictate? I really like the idea, I can't remember who just said it, but of having it be maybe more of an elementary school thing, with the whole thought process of, it's really hard for elementary school kiddos to, do the proper hand washing and to just be really mindful of all that stuff. So I do think having it at that elementary level would be beneficial. My son has a peanut allergy. So I mean, like Brittany and Laura have said, I understand that concern. And then like Patty said, maybe there are those exceptions for those, like it can be written into IEPs or something like that, and then protocols can be in place. But I agree, if we're going to do like a parent survey, there should be that education beforehand, and then maybe looking at narrowing it to the elementary schools instead of kind of district wide.
Laura?
I agree. I think that the kids that are most at risk, I mean, having a child that has a life-threatening allergy, I mean, it's elementary school is going to be a lot more risky than probably junior high. In junior high, they're self-carrying their EpiPens. They totally understand it. I feel like they might get it a little bit more. And as far as so I think that's a really great place to begin, is the elementary schools, to keep the younger kids safe. And as far as a parent survey goes, I mean, I agree, that's kind of opening up a can of worms. There's a lot of people that think that, they have a right to a peanut butter sandwich more than our kids have a right to be included in lunch or to be safe at school. And I find it really interesting that we're sitting here in a very small group, and there is 4 of us that have children just sitting that have spoken about it. I don't know if there are more, but that have peanut or nut allergies. So it would be interesting too to find out what the percentage is of kids that are at this school that are anaphylactic to nuts, and in both elementary schools, because realistically, on average, nationally, it's 2 kids per classroom. And that's high. That's 2 kids' lives that are at risk from net exposure. So it's something that's serious, and it's something that does need to be addressed, I think. And elementary level is the perfect place to do it. And, you know, it's true, the East Coast, I mean, I don't know why they're so far ahead of us in the allergy game. It's pretty amazing, but the West Coast has some catching up to do. And I think we're a good, this is a good place to start. And I think we should really push forward with it.
Thank you. I agree. I think that, and I know like in the districts that we came from on the East Coast, the middle and high schools were not these mandated nut-free schools. It is a specific to the elementary school, you know, or the pre-K schools. And even a lot of the daycares on the East Coast are also nut-free facilities completely. So I think that we can either open up a survey. I do agree though. I think that we're going to get a lot of angry parents, right? No matter how much education we provide, who just want to have a peanut butter sandwich. But I also agree with Patty that, you know, like some of her students, that this is part of their day. That's what an IEP is for. And I think that we can create solutions for those, you know, small packs of kids, right? I think that we can make that something that they need and figure that out. But I think that it's smart and I think it's safe to move forward as an elementary school and try to make our school a nut-free zone. Laura?
Just one more thing. One of the things that I've done a lot of reading about this, of course, lots of research. And one of the things that have come up actually is designating a school as nut-free sort of gives this idea that there's this safe environment, like you're in a bubble or something. And that's not, I think, that's the other piece of it is, for me personally, I want my kids to know how to navigate in the real world. So saying like this whole school's not free would be a misnomer. I mean, there's peanut butter there. Someone's going to be bringing a peanut butter sandwich in. Like you can't prevent it from being there. So I think establishing a no nut policy and letting parents know that this school does not accept nuts. Like do not bring nuts onto campus. But saying nut free, I feel like gives sort of like this false sense of security. So I don't know if it's just wording or what, but that's just kind of something that's been coming up as I'm reading, you know, for moving forward with it, just sort of a, I guess, side note.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, again, I think having the speaker come is a good step. And, you know, having him at both elementary schools at the beginning of the year. We're talking, I want to say the either 4th or 5th day of school next year, he'll be here at both elementaries. So I think it'll start the conversation. And, you know, if it doesn't start for some people, at least we'll put it into their mind and hopefully can come to a forum like this where we can have more conversations. We can invite Nurse Powley and have parents discuss and share, if you know, if they're willing to, what happens when their child becomes ill. So it kind of wakes them up. Because when I met Laura in last spring, and she brought this to my attention with Principal Martinez when her kids were in the preschool over at the adult school, you know, my comeback to her and her husband was, well, the district adopted a no balloon policy to save turtles a long time ago. And I can't see why we wouldn't come eventually to a discussion about saving kids. Now, again, personally, I love peanut butter. I absolutely do. But again, it's about education. And one thing I wrote down just in while you guys were talking was the possibility next year after Kyle comes to start doing some taste tests for kids. Because we can provide those taste tests for foods that maybe they're not considering that are safer. And then just slowly, you know, having them understand like, hey, this is an alternative for you to keep kids safe, regardless if the policy's in place or not. So again, I'm totally for the consideration of having a no nut policy. I just know that I won't be able to do it by myself as an isolated school. The board has made it very clear that they want what's occurring at this elementary to occur at the other elementary. And I would only assume they would want this policy to be in place. And just as an administrator, understanding policies and always checking on policies, it makes more sense to me to have it district-wide. But I completely understand where you all are, with the elementary level, because that makes sense, as kids mature. Excuse me.
Can I just say one more thing too?
Please, yes.
And it really is, I think the thing that we have to keep coming back to is safety. And it's not necessarily to like ban anyone eating nuts anywhere in the district or anything like that. I know that at the PG co-op at the adult school, I don't know if they still have a no nut policy, but they were no nuts on the kids side. The adult side, they are doing whatever. But district wide, I think feels like a really far reach, and it feels like to ask for the whole district, that would be just in my gut would almost feel like an automatic no. But starting at elementary school and taking it from an angle of just saying, this is for safety. And if we can come to the board with some numbers of how many kids have a nut allergy of any kind, I think that might make a big difference. Because if you just, we do so many things to keep our kids safe every single day. The drills we do, things that are probably never going to happen, but yet we drill for them. You role play, you do all these things to prepare. And this is a real life scenario where every day we send our kids to school. And it's scary as a parent of two kids with multiple nut allergies. It's a scary thing. And, you're just kind of like, gosh, I hope nothing happens today. My phone rings. I'm like, oh, please don't be the school, so it's that kind of thing. And I think I'm not going to cry, but I'm sure you guys can relate. So I think if we come from a safety standpoint, like saying like, it's so important just to keep our kids safe, safety, safety, safety. I'm hoping that will be the ticket, the key. Sorry.
It's okay. So I just want everyone to know that I've never done, again, a safety goal as part of the SIPSA before, but I knew that I found out from Mr. Rogeman that he has done a safety goal for goal number 4. So I do plan to have one done by this time next week. And I'm going to put in there about the consideration for a nut-free policy for our campus. And, with the hope that it will expand to other sites, and however that goes, it goes. But as I told Laura, I think it's just a little bit longer than what I projected. I was hoping that through this year, obviously we would discuss as a site council. This site council has made it very clear that you support with the majority that a nut policy at this school should occur. And what I had told Laura at this time last year was that I was hoping we'd have the support here, and we'd be able to go to the next level with other sites, find out where they are. And if they were on the same board, then we could present. And we can go to the board, ask them to put it on the agenda. And then after that, then you have basically an info discussion. And then at that info discussion, the board would then have to direct to either have a vote at the next board meeting or at a future board meeting at some point, where they would have to either write a policy of some sort or adopt a policy of some sort. And then, again, that's the higher level. That's that whole district wide. But this possibly could be a district policy for the elementary school. So we still could go to that level. I'm just going to tell you right now that, again, if I were to just make a decree and say, this is happening at Robert Down, I would hear from my boss, who would say, Sean, hold on. You need to go to the board. You need to make sure this is on the up and up and that the discussion occurs. So again, I'm willing to do that. But I think, again, after Kyle speaks, I think it will lend to us a great opportunity to open the conversation up with the other schools, with Forest Grove in particular, and to see where other parents are from Forest Grove. And to see, if we can have it placed on the agenda. We are usually the second school who, the board used to go around pre-pandemic to each site to do a board meeting so they could visit the site as a board. And if they do that again, hopefully the variants and everything end and we stop having COVID cases and they feel comfortable to go around to different sites. But if we have a presentation from Robert Down after Kyle's presentation, I promise you that this is something I will bring up to the board. That's something that we've discussed, to an extent during this year. And that is something that this site council is interested in doing for our school. And that we're hoping that other schools can jump on board. And we can start, hopefully really moving in that direction. I did have a parent reach out to me, they text me, and I think it has to do with this. I didn't read it in open comment because it has to do with this topic. So I did want to share the gist of where this parent's coming from. And I think the parent's on the same page as most of us here. Dear Mr. Keller, I see that the nut-free policy continues to be a part of the site council agenda. I'm interested in staying updated on this potential policy change. I support a K-5 nut-free plan, but I strongly disagree with the extending that to the higher grades. Nuts are an excellent source of protein and nutrients, far better than meat and dairy by most measures. I struggle to get my kids to eat enough healthy protein. I think kids 6th grade and older are smart enough to make appropriate food decisions based on their individual needs. I realize you hear many opinions, but in case you're gathering input, I wanted to submit my position. So I thought it was fair to put this on the record, or that parent's opinion. So I just want to know, again, we are a mini board for this school, and boards tell administrators to take action. So would you like me to take action before next year when Kyle Dine comes? Or is this site council okay with us waiting until Kyle comes to speak to both our school and Forest Grove?
I think I wouldn't mind, maybe why can't we do something that kind of, I don't know, like a little bit of a dance, maybe go ahead and start taking action and letting the board know what our plans are and what we would like. And is it possible when school starts, is it possible to even have Kyle even at the board meeting, maybe when school starts as well, to also educate the board, and the board is already aware, we're already on the agenda. And then as a site council, we can present this and our request at the same time. And then parents in the community who would like more education, we can have Kyle at the board meeting as well.
I'll reach out to Kyle. I'll ask him if he's willing to do that. Because again, I assume that they're going to allow the Zoom or virtual option for board meetings forever. Because I think it's a great option for families that can't, physically get there. So yeah, I think he'll, if he's willing to, I don't know if he'll have a fee for that, but
if that's something, okay, Patty?
Yeah, I know what the concern that I brought up with my class, and I support a nut-free school. I do. I just want to make sure that there is that exception for my students if I do need to serve it for them, and keeping it in the classroom like I'm doing now. And I make that effort not to have them eat the peanut butter item like outside at the tables, but that it's an in-class thing. And so, but I would think it would be important to get this moving forward sooner than later. And it would be nice to start the year off at the beginning of the year, just stating that this is what Robert Down is. And so the sooner that we can move forward on it, I think it's the better. And to start off the year with that.
I agree.
But just for the willingness for some exceptions for those IEP kids that have very limited diets.
And I think we are all on the same page that I don't personally think that, I agree, middle school and high school, we're not trying to take it that far.
Yeah.
This is only a need that needs to happen at the middle school level. The IEPs for students like Patty's, those could be concrete. And Mr. Keller, can we put that in that goal 4, in that safety goal, where we recognize that, you know, like a classroom like Miss Bloomer's, you know, those students will have IEPs. It will only be in that specific classroom. We will create safety protocols around that for specific students. But kicking off the school year in August, if we have Kyle, we're already prepared. We're already moving forward. It's the best thing to be ready to say we're a nut-free school.
I agree.
From an administrative standpoint, is that going to be hard for you to do, Sean? Like, can you put these things in place without getting permission from the higher ups?
No, I'm writing a note to myself right now to reach out to Dr. Porras and to Katrina Pally.
Because my fear is that if we put things in place and we almost shoot ourselves in the foot, like I don't want to put all of this in place when they're not ready to hear it, and then we've lost our momentum and our opportunity from an administrative standpoint. Like I just want to be methodical about it and make sure that we have the greatest chance of success. And I don't know once it gets to Dr. Porras and all of that, how it works, but I think it should be in place as soon as possible, but I also don't want to move ahead when we might be hurting our chances at success. That's all.
Agree.
And I'm not suggesting that we do this without the board. I'm suggesting that we follow whatever we need to do now to address the board as a site council. That's what we do. We start the right way now, addressing the board now. Like, so that way we're not, you know, creating more barriers for ourselves. So whatever our next step is with the board as a site council, we need to do that so that we do all of this the right way, so that we can be ready come August, at the latest September.
Okay, so give me 1 second. I'm looking at when the board meets for the next few weeks, because there's only so many left, just so everyone knows. Okay, so we are at May 9th today. And just so you know, to put anything in front of the board, I have to provide it roughly about 2 weeks prior. I personally will not be here for the June 16th board because I'll be traveling. But we have 3 meetings left, the 19th, June 2nd, and June 16th. As an admin team, we recommended last week, all the sites recommended to the management team that we are able to present the SIPSAs at the June 2nd board meeting. We have, I believe they want us to present the California Healthy Kids survey results on May 19th. And I'm going to have to get everything to them possibly by tomorrow or Wednesday. So it could be out in draft to the board and to the public for next week's meeting. So if we were to do this with, I can zoom in from my travels on the 16th. It's a lot of time change, but I'll be willing to do it. But June 2nd really is our window, okay? So I am going to reach out after our meeting to Dr. Porras and to Katrina Pally to see if this can be placed on the agenda as an information discussion. And we'll see, okay? I think it could go either way. I just want to pre-warn everybody. They can say yes. They could say, sorry, Sean, we have too many items moving forward right now, and we don't have time in this round, but we can add you next year. So I just want to put that out there. But if they say that it can happen on the 16th, again, I'm more than happy to make it work and zoom in and be there for everybody for discussion. Does that work for everybody?
That sounds like a plan.
Okay.
Okay. Do you have any more comments about the net-free policy before we move on? Okay. So just a quick update about, Mr. Keller, if you have one, about the Spanish program.
Yeah,
Okay.
I do. So the good news is we had interviews last Friday. And I think we found a very excited candidate that we have forwarded to Human Resources to hire. And again, the plan is to provide Spanish to 4th and 5th grades. And based on studies, it's believed that if students have 90 minutes a week of a curriculum, that it's beneficial, especially for language. So that's the goal, to provide 2 lessons per week for each classroom, both at Forest Grove and Robert Down. And I'll be able to share more later when the background checks are completed and the candidate accepts the position or not. And if something happens and doesn't work out from the HR perspective, then I believe we'll be going back to the drawing board and flying the position and trying to find a different candidate. But at the end of those interviews, we forwarded a name, and we're looking forward to having this person start in the fall. I believe Heloisa has a question.
Yes, so that class is going to be taken instead of what other form of instruction?
Well, it obviously will be taking 90 minutes away for the week. 5th and 4th grade have a lot to cover. We're not planning to take anything away per se. We're going to try to fit it in addition to. So we don't want to take away any 5th grade music. We don't want to take away choir with Mr. Macer. We don't want to take away computer time, whether it be with Mr. Villagomez or with Mr. Bradley. We don't want to take away PE, all that's going to be included. Library time, it will just be an additional thing for 4th and 5th grade. Any other questions? Okay.
Okay.
I
So
have
then-
a quick, I
oh,
have a
go ahead.
quick question. I'm sorry. Was
Yeah.
there additional consideration we had just sort of thrown around out there, and I'm sorry I missed the last meeting, about having something kind of in place to introduce the younger grades, not with a teacher, but some sort of like online curriculum that their classroom teachers might be able to sort of lead?
Yeah, we threw around, there's a program that our intervention teachers use for reading and math, which is called Lexia. And they just came out with, they at least proposed to us a version for Spanish. And I haven't been a part of that conversation. I'm sorry, I'm just aware because of what we've discussed. And I received an email and I forwarded it to Ani Silva. And she explained to me that they're looking into it. So that's a possibility. It is a computer-based program. And I know a long time ago, we looked into the possibility of virtual lessons. This was all pre-pandemic. We had no idea what Zoom was or anything like that. And that company was really expensive. It was almost like paying a teacher for teacher salaries. And they limited it to just one classroom. So for each classroom, you had to pay this fee. And we thought, oh my gosh, that's really expensive. And that's kind of what we were dealing with the after school enrichment or ASE class that was only with a group of 30 students for 2 years. And that's not equitable to me. So we'll keep the options open for sure. And in anything you hear about, if you hear about a video series, I know we use a thing called Mystery Science, Force Science right now. And I love it because when I walk into a room, kids are really engaged with the videos, and anything like that that's out there, I would really be interested in buying it for the teachers and the kids because I just feel like it's really engaging. And I've seen that. I've seen things for STEM. I haven't seen anything for language. So I would have to do more research on that. But for right now, I would also want the input from the teacher, because the teacher might have some great ideas to provide to our staff. And in my opinion, the candidate has a lot of experience and probably does have some recommendations for us to use. So once that person is hired, I'll be talking their ear off to try to get some ideas.
And this person will be Robert Down at Robert Down and Forest Grove, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Do we have any more questions for item 7? If not, we'll move on to number 8. Mr. Keller, is there a more recent update about the status of the new social studies curriculum and when that will be set up for the public to view, or do we know where that is yet? I thought it was hopefully going to be this month before the end of school.
I reached out to Mrs. Hover, she and Mrs. Johnson are on the committee from our school. So I reached out to Ms. Hover right before the meeting to get an update. She thinks it's between a company called Studies Weekly, which is out of the Valley, and a group called TCI. And from what I understand, TCI is the adopted social studies program at the middle school currently. And when I did research before last year into Studies Weekly, I actually had a conversation with the rep. How their program differs, it's not a textbook. It's actually almost like, remember the Scholastic magazines? We still get those for the students here. It's some newspaper, and every lesson is like a newspaper. So their philosophy with Studies Weekly is to try to get kids to read the news, but it just happens to be older news in the sense of history and historical facts and maps. It's very colorful, and I just see it, it's engaging to my brain, and it's not too much. Not too much going on, because sometimes when you adopt a textbook, it's just too busy, right? But they've got the facts there. They have the main, excuse me, they have the main topic on the page, and then they have a couple sidebar things. And from what I understand, at least from Mrs. Hober's sense, that is the lead curriculum that they're looking at, but they're making a decision tomorrow. And once they make that recommendation to the board, then the curriculum will be on display at the district office for parents to go view.
Okay. Okay, good. Okay, sounds good. Okay.
All right.
Do we have any other questions or comments around item number 8 before we move on? If not, okay, we're going to take it back to item number 5 and dive into the SIPs. And then Mr. Keller, which one would you like us to work up to start on first?
Well, that first part, excuse me, that I sent to you last week, that kind of is the opener, because that's the update of this year's SIPSA. And I just wanted to open up there, and I hope everybody had a chance to discuss it. And like I said earlier, to be honest, I was really hoping to go through last week, every 2 days, give you one goal, and just last week was a whirlwind. And then we had the weekend with Mother's Day and the parade and all that stuff. I'm sorry, I couldn't get it done. I really couldn't. So my apologies on that. But as I shared in my email when I sent you goal 1 last night, we do have that extension. I really do hope that some of you, or if not all, can come back a week from today. I would like us to meet with our leadership team, which is all teachers, representative from each grade level, and for us to really look at the whole, for me to get this done, get it out to everybody with a couple days before the 16th, and for us to really discuss it to see if you approve it or not. for next year.
Okay, so we'll take, so we'll have what we got from last week, but then it'll basically, so we'll meet again next Monday. But then we'll have the whole thing, right? So then we'll have a few more days to kind of go through that whole thing, and then we can all meet with leadership to kind of really hit it hard. Okay.
Yeah, and Aaron just asked, can this be shared beyond the site council? And that's absolutely. So again, I try to do my principal updates mostly on Thursday. If I'm close to being finished with a draft of all 3 goals, if I have that done by Thursday, I absolutely will share those 3 goals with all parents in my principal update, inviting them to come next Thursday with the link to the meeting. And I've got no qualms about that whatsoever. You know, we definitely want to have more insight. To be honest, a lot of this is my brain, you know, and this is what I think about when I'm trying to make plans. But I love getting more input. And last night when I was going over goal 2, which I'll share out verbally today because I don't have anything on paper. I have all my mad scientist scribbles on my sheets. You know, I got up to 10 goals for the sub goals because I just think one after the other, like, hey, we need to do this. We need to add this. We need to do this. But I also want to be realistic because this year, you know, we weren't able to do a lot of the goals. And I need to get realistic about what kind of support and what kind of things need to be in place for these goals to be accomplished. And quite frankly, a lot of these things come down to staff buy-in and for parental support. And, you know, I'll get to that when I have some recommendations. But for this first section, which was the comprehensive update, or the comprehensive needs assessment components, which is basically an update of the current SIPSA. Were there any things glaring that you think were left out? Do you have any questions about what's in there?
I know that for me, on page 3, underneath surveys, and then we've got results, and then we go down to the bullying.
Yeah.
Which is huge, coming back. Well, I will not say from a pandemic because we're still in the middle of a pandemic, but
yeah,
I think where it says, let me make sure, I think I just lost my entire spot. Where'd it go? Oh, okay, no. We're actually going down below that to classroom observations. And it talks about 17 official observations that were made. And then it says, in addition, at the end, this year has shown how much student conflicts can lead to family versus another family, and that not all parents have embraced the toolbox tools for restorative practices, somewhat leading to loss in adult friendships.
Yeah, that's all anecdotal of parents that in conflicts that I've dealt with between families. It seems like it's coming up that you know, some people have, because of what's happened with their kids, it's affected their personal friendship as well. And I think that's something we're going to need to talk about with parents.
Is that something that we could, because I hear you, but it kind of seems like we're taking this huge social emotional issue that possibly maybe already existed, but maybe it's magnified because of the pandemic, or maybe the pandemic created it, right? And then we're turning it into verbiage and putting the fault on families and parents when families are also in the middle of a pandemic, right? And struggling. And so I guess it just seems like that becomes something, I don't know, that maybe we need to change the verbiage or say it differently. It just, I don't know, it just strikes me weird for some reason.
Sure. So you think, because again, what I wanted to lead toward is having some parent nights for Toolbox and SEL for parents as well. Unfortunately, the SEL parent nights that we offered through the adult school this last year, they just weren't, they weren't attended. Based on what Sonda Fruden shared with me, that, you know, maybe 1 or 2 parents would show. And I just want to put out there that we're seeing how these things are affecting everybody. It's not just affecting the kids on the campus, but it's affecting the adults too. And I want to try to help as a school as much as possible to teach the not just the toolbox, but I don't think a lot of families understand restorative practices either. And I think I need to do a better job of helping families understand what restorative practices means. So
Is that something that we need to, but is that something that we need to tackle from a school and student base and just maybe press the district for more funding to get more therapists or social workers into the school, you know, like, because I get it, I see what you're saying, but it just also seems like families are also under a lot of stress right now. And maybe this all needs to go back to, we need more help at school to handle the social emotional well-being of the children.
I had a question, Mr. Keller.
yeah,
I was wondering if we were going to get back to having our monthly assemblies. I liked when we were using our character counts and, you know, within our monthly assemblies, and we have parents that show up to that, and wondered if there was a way of, as we're teaching the kids how to use their tools and their understanding character, if we can find a way that the students are teaching their parents, because I've been to some of those, you know, social emotional things, even up at the middle school, and you're right, no one shows up. I'm like one of two parents, and parents love to come to see their kids, you know, and we talked about it at one time about, you know, using the drama team, you know, the drama kids to do little skits on a character or using a tool. And I just wonder if we could be a little more creative with that, and having the kids put on a skit about a character or using a tool, and parents come to see their kids and to see the skill. And, you know, almost kind of like after each assembly, if we're sending home some kind of scenarios that we're asking parents to have these conversations with their kids about these scenarios and how we might use those tools, and having the kids teach the parents, and giving the almost kind of like homework to go at home. It's like, we encourage you to talk about these scenarios at home around your dinner table, and talk about what tool you might use, and having the kids teaching the parents about it. I don't know. It's just a thought. And we had lots of parents come to those assemblies each month, you know, to see their kids sing. And if just wondering how we can pull in that social emotional learning into the assemblies again, and bringing parents in to come see it, rather than have a speaker come in and invite the whole school and only have a handful of parents show up. I don't know, just an idea.
Hattie, to piggyback off of what you were saying, in a school before we had like student-led assemblies, and it was usually like our 5th grade leadership team, and they would come up with a skit. And then when COVID hit, it was all virtual, you know, but they would do like an acting out and then talk about the character trait that we were focusing on that month. So if we did something like that, or if it was filmed somehow, it could also be sent home to families in an email. And then, you know, it gives kind of a talking point. Also, I think that like the movie nights are always a huge success. These like kind of family gathering nights are a huge success. I wonder, it would take some creative thinking, but if we could almost tie it to like the toolboxes where there's information about it, or there's an activity to go along with it. I mean, if you wanted to make it a whole like family night, you could even do different stations, and each station could be like a different toolbox tool. And then they do an activity, a project, a craft that kind of goes along with it. But maybe that way it just helps the parents, you know, that connection, that homeschool connection, using the same language. But I really like that idea of just, you know, kind of bringing it as a community thing. And I think that, you know, we could be creative about it, but I think we could definitely do it.
Definitely. And I mean, I even see like, even like a little Google slideshow, that
Mhm.
might have a little video that some kids do a little skit. And then the next
Yeah.
slide is like, what tool would you use? And the 3 tools. And here now the parents are seeing the tools and they're watching it with their kid. And it could just
Right.
be like monthly homework that each grade
Mhm.
level could make a requirement. Like you do this, slideshow and you do the social emotional activity. And when you turn it in, you get like a ticket for a popsicle, and
Yeah,
and
yeah.
getting parents to have these conversations around the dinner table, and it's homework, but they're also learning from their kids because
Right.
the parents aren't learning from us and they're not learning from the guest speakers, but they love to watch their kids. And so
They
I
do.
know
I
I
would say
do,
as a
and
working
so-
parent, that's the
So
best
everybody,
thing.
Yeah.
just for the sake
Well-
of time,
Oh.
I want to propose a rephrase of those sentences. But you are really jumping into goal 2, which is all about social emotional learning. Somebody had asked what SEL stands for. But let me see if this is a better rephrasing of, if it kind of gets to the gist of what I was talking about. So in addition, we start from there. In addition, this year has shown how much student conflicts have also negatively affected families. More support for students helping parents learn about toolbox and restorative practices is needed, i.e. family toolbox nights, etc.
I like that. And maybe like,
All right.
not just learning the families, but like helping students and in turn, the students taking that home.
Because
Patty, that was awesome. So cool. I love the brainstorming that just happened. That was really great. Cool, you guys.
and again, one of the goals for goal 1 is really to have the 4th and 5th graders take a leadership role on this campus. One of the pieces is I really would like to start a student council here, which I tried my first year. It failed miserably, but I know Forest Grove is doing one. And I'm so jealous because I was an activities director and we had a student council at the high school. And I just felt we needed that here. I tried it, it just didn't work. But again, it's about support, right? I'm gonna need a parent from PTA to help me with that. I'm gonna need a staff member to help me with that. I just can't do things alone anymore. So I think that that's something perfect that I know Sonda Fruden would absolutely love to see kids become like toolbox warriors or whatever you want to call them, and that they help teach toolbox to families at these family nights. And like you're saying, Valerie, to have the kids bring it home and to bring it up more at dinner and to have them discuss it, because that's the whole key. Once kids get these tools under their belt, they don't necessarily have to call it by the tool name when they're older. They just practice it because it's just so natural to them. And earlier in the year, we were talking to the 4th and the 5th graders, and Ms. Tobin at the Toolbox Tuesday had said, well, Mr. Keller, the students feel like they don't need their toolbox any longer. And I just looked at them, I said, well, guys, I just respectfully disagree. If the toolbox was used by adults, we would have no conflict in this world. And unfortunately, conflict just happens, and you're going to need your toolbox later in life. I'm 52. I need my toolbox every day. So these are great ideas, and thank you. Are there other things that kind of stood out to you that we need to rephrase or take out or add? In this, we're talking again, the first section from pages 3 to 6.
There was a part, but it may not be on this one. It may be on what you sent last night. So I'll bring that up on Monday because now I'm not seeing it. I wanted to know if there wasn't mention about the site council and us not doing a survey. are we supposed to do a survey, or is that just something that we have been taught? That was something we have been talking about, right?
It was in our goals to
Okay.
have one. And that's, again, that's about trying, I think next year with Site Council, I would like to present having at least 1 or 2 people be in charge of that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
they, just boom, they make sure it gets done. They're the sergeant at arms to make sure it happens. And I'm not sure if I shared this with you already. I think I shared it with Laura. I did ask the management team if in the registration packet, we can get, an okay or not to have, or approval or not, to have the surveys done throughout the year. And for the local one, we definitely can do that in the registration packet.
Okay, that's
But
perfect.
for the California Healthy Kids, at least for now, we don't think we can, because that is something that the state puts out. And unless we provided everything, and West Ed, who is a part of Stanford University, who puts on the California Healthy Kids survey, they would have to approve us getting the approval in that fashion. Because unfortunately, the elementary schools are opt-in. And why this is a change, I don't know, but for the middle and high school, it's opt-out. So I think that would be confusing for parents, especially families that have high school, middle school, and elementary, or at least from the upper grades down to kindergarten through 5th. That would probably be confusing for them with the Healthy Kids. But it was told to me that we probably couldn't get that approved for the registration.
One thing that stands out for me, the staffing and professional development.
Which page?
I guess I'm looking on the bottom of page 4. Is that the bottom of page 4, staffing and professional development? I would really like to see something that's specific. When we talk about the professional development for assistants, and we reference like the SWAN or the social emotional, I just feel like the professional development for the SPED really needs to be relevant to what it is that we're doing on a daily basis. And sometimes, when we go to the SWAN, I'm the modifying of it. The SWAN, we don't get enough from the SWAN professional development that applies to like how we might adapt or modify that. It almost needs to be like more specific to what it is that we're doing. If it's, responding to crisis, if it's our handle with care review, if it's understanding how to run a lesson and take data. But I guess I would feel like I really want to see something in there when we talk about instructional assistance, that there's something in that comments to the individuality of what the SPED department needs. Because we're included into that, but very, very little of that professional development can we apply to what we're doing every day. And so I'd like to see a professional development really like hone. And if it's just someone that comes from the SELPA special ed department from MCOE, that comes to give our instructional assistants, and even some of those instructional assistants that are working with Miss Rivera that might be working with some of the more challenging students in our typical classes, of just conflict resolution in that, or how to use token boards or prompting, or just something a little bit more specific to SPED that we use on a daily basis. And I think the staff is really eager to be learning more.
Okay.
And so I'd like to see something specific to that, not just instructional assistants, but I know like my paras have a different name besides instructional assistants. And maybe if it's just in there instructional assistants, and I think they're called para educators. So maybe if it is with additional training for instructional assistants and para instructors. And so realizing that there is a different need for instructional assistance than what the para educators need. And that we're just looking to provide some professional development yearly that is more specific to what it is that we are doing day to day in our class.
I added that to goal 3. Goal
you.
3 is all about English, language arts, or ELA, and math.
Okay,
And so just so you know, I added that as an activity 7 for goal 3.
thank you.
Okay, now we have professional development relevant, for SPED, especially our STC class.
Yes,
The teachers, we'll have 2 teachers, just so everyone knows. We have someone coming down from the middle school next year to join Patty to help her with her numbers and also with your paraprofessionals in those classrooms.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
That's a great idea. You don't bring it up, then we don't
Yeah.
think about it. So I think it's great. Yeah, we can reach out to MCOE. We can reach out to other districts that are teaching SWAN in the county. And we can also reach out to Super Kids and Benchmark to see what they're doing for their STC or their special education departments.
Yeah, thank you.
Great idea. Anything else that's sticking out from pages 3 to 6? Okay, so for any parents that watch the recording later, again, we'll have the recording in the principal update on Thursday. We'll include this update and the other goals, the updates to the goals for next year's SIPSA in there. So you can look at the page numbers for referencing purposes.
I have one more question.
Sure.
What page is it on? Okay, so on page 3, at the bottom of surveys, it says that professional development, 56% and 60% of staff believe there should be professional development provided regarding meeting the social, emotional, and developmental needs of youth and working with diverse racial, ethnic, or cultural groups. So where, because that is a big concern, right? Not only honestly at Robert Down, but PG school district as a whole. So where will we put that as our goal? Like where can we address that? And we'll probably talk about this more on Monday, I'm assuming too.
Yeah, so that will be in goal 2 because goal 2 has everything to do with that's SEL.
Okay.
Excuse me. And just so you know, unfortunately Sonda's out. She's been out with COVID, poor thing. But she and I talked today. We had a really good talk today. So at least for the SEL, there's kind of 2 things. One, it's IFSEL. It's the group that was working with the parents earlier in the year. They also provided staff training virtually all year long. And they had one in-person training with classified staff from both Robert Down and Forest Grove over at Forest Grove earlier in the year. But then when they planned to come for the teachers and for admin, the numbers just went skyrocketing in January. So we kind of took a halt because we felt that the training was just so much more powerful in person than it was online, and that we wanted to wait. And IFSEL was outstanding in that they listened to us and they told us, don't worry, we will honor your contract and we will continue providing professional development next year in person. So they will be coming back for our staff in the fall before school starts. And I believe we still have some more hours with them as we go into the fall. I'm so sorry. They have provided a huge binder with great SEL lessons for every staff member. And I've created several binders, one for each grade level, so they can share them. And plus, we also have the toolbox lessons. And that's what Sonda and I were talking about before today's meeting, because I just wanted to make sure she was okay with the plan that's in my head. And she's all for it. I was trying to get some data from her about how much she's gone into classrooms this year. And she really wants to provide more SEL for classrooms. And she wants to up it to about, I want to say 2 times, shoot, I wrote it down someplace, I'm so sorry. Let me see here, give me 1 second. She wanted to go into classrooms at least between 12 to 13 times a year, which, when you believe it or not, that actually is a lot to go in with all the things we have going on with testing and assemblies and what have you. But she wanted to be consistent for every single grade level, because she gave me her numbers for going in and working with kids in the classroom. And unfortunately, it's 3rd, 4th, and 5th were pretty consistent with about 12 to 13 times. But for kinder and 1st and 2nd, it was between 6, 8, and 10 times for those different grade levels. So she really would like to get going on a more consistent basis in the classrooms. Now, the second thing for what's there with the staff wanting the 60% and working with diverse racial, ethnic, and culture groups. Give me a sec, I gotta drink some water. Hold on. Sonda, pre-pandemic, had been talking with the Village Project. I know, Valerie, you're very familiar with that group. Sonda had talked with them prior to the pandemic about coming to Robert Down. And I think with this result and the effort that the district's taking with the equity committee, and just so you know, the equity committee has representatives from each site throughout the entire district. And we will be drafting an equity plan for the district and having goals for each site. So those are still to be determined, and it's too bad we can't get it into the SIPSA before next year, but it definitely will be something that will be part of the SIPSA going into next year and the plan that we have. And Sonda and I today were talking about how we really would like to see how the community group, the Village Project, can work with our school and help not just our staff understand how to work with students of color, but also how we can get voice from the students of color. And, because Valerie has shared with me, personally, things that have happened at this school and things that I'm not proud of at all. And I don't want those things to happen. And, we definitely need to take more focus on that. And we need to talk about it more. But it definitely is a delicate subject, and we want to do it right. So we want to bring in community members that will help guide us. And that's one idea and one agency in our area that we want to partner with. If there are other agencies that you think would help in this manner to help, or either work with us, work with parents, work with students, please let me know. But this is one agency that Dr. Porras introduced me to, and that Sonda has reached out to before. So I'm really looking forward to contacting the Village Project in Seaside to see what they can offer, how much they would be, and I'll put it in the SIPSA, and I'm hoping to move forward and to get their community activists to come work with us.
Mm-hmm. And I have been in conversation with the Village Project. I'll see them again on Wednesday. I'm there about twice a week with the boys. I'm not really sure that the process going forward from our point of view is to come into the school. I personally think that as a district, we need to adopt an absolute zero tolerance when it comes to issues of race and bullying based off, distinctly based off race, which is, there's a lot of that happening at Robert Down. And I'm not so sure that, my concern as a person of color is that it seems sometimes like it falls on these groups of color to educate these predominantly white communities. And I don't think that that is right. That creates a burden, that creates another emotional kind of hardship and mental hardship. And so I think that when I speak with the Village Project and what that work would entail, I'm not so sure that that's the answer, because sometimes I think that what that is once again, taking the responsibility off of the group that it should be on and putting it onto the group that is usually at the end of this discrimination. So I think that, me personally, I think that the responsibility needs to come from the district. And I know that for myself, I am prepared and beginning to push the district harder. The district needs to take responsibility and create an absolute no tolerance when it comes to any student harming or threatening or bullying or making any kind of hate speech. And that's for any child at school. And that's whether my kid experiences it or if my kid is on the ends of giving that. So that's just my personal opinion. I don't think that the responsibility is on, the Village Project. I think the responsibility is on the district, and that is something that I will be moving forward with.
No, thank you. And again, and personally, again, I really would like parents to be a part of the equity team that's being brought together. Our next meeting is June 1st, and I'm going to extend or ask if we can extend invitations. If that's something that any of you would like to be a part of, please let me know. And because I know that's the last training that we have for the year, where we will be challenged with creating an equity plan for the district. And again, I asked if parents could be a part of that process. I think with what you're discussing right now, Valerie, that's something that is happening at these meetings that we have. They've been tough discussions for everybody involved. And I've recommended that parents be a part of that. And I'm really hoping that, in the end, that we will be able to invite parents to those trainings.
And Brittany's asking when that will happen. I'd like to know too, especially if we've got one coming up on June 1st. If you'll let us know so that we can be a part of that. And then I see that Laura Ottomer had her hand raised.
Yeah, it's occurring June 1st. Yeah, Laura?
I was going to ask, well, now that it's at the front of my mind, if you're able to, are you able to, is that Zoom or is that an in-person?
That we've had it in person every time so far. And
is that at the school or?
We had the first one at the Pacific Grove High School Library. And the second one, they both were in March. One was the beginning of March and one was at the end of March.
Okay.
And this next one, I believe, will be back at the high school once summer starts. Okay. And that's on June 1st.
June 1st.
Okay.
Yeah.
And again, I will ask again if families or parents can be invited. That was my intent. When I heard that we were doing this work, it just seemed so natural that parents would be a part of this. And unfortunately, parents just weren't invited.
If I recall, did you meet though in the middle of the day? Because that's a limiting factor, I think.
Yeah, we met all day. We met from 8 o'clock until 3 o'clock.
But it's during the week though, right?
Yeah, it wasn't on a Saturday.
I wonder if you, I know that, I don't know, but I wonder if you just get more participation if it was held in a time when people wouldn't have to leave work or miss work to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that this group here, if it was held on a Saturday, that
I would attend? I can't go in the middle of the week, but I would go on it.
I would attend also on a Saturday. Was it even, but are you saying though that it wasn't even an option, like you wanted parents to be involved, but they made the choice not to allow us to attend?
I just basically, I asked if parents could be involved and it didn't come to fruition. Okay. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus.
Got it.
I had asked because, and again, why I'm bringing this up right now is during our last session, our instructors talked about other communities and how they created their equity plan. And if I'm pretty sure I didn't hear incorrectly, but they shared that parents were involved. And again, I just was wondering why aren't parents here? This is about their kids, this is about them and their kids' education. So again, on behalf of this group, I will definitely ask if parents can be involved on June 1st. I'd like to see it happen.
So the question that I had initially raised my hand about was, I'm wondering about just sort of the district and school policy as far as bullying because of race goes, or any hate talk or hate speech or anything like that. Is there something in place right now that's zero tolerance that says, like, if you're out on the playground and you're making racial slurs or making derogatory reference to someone's race or sexual preference, whatever it is, but probably most likely in this school would be race. I mean, they're probably a little bit young for the sexual orientation thing, but is there a zero policy in place now? So that, because I'm wondering, if something's happening to someone's kid, like Valerie's obviously had this experience. I mean, there should be zero tolerance. That should be absolutely not tolerated, and I just kind of wonder where that's at now.
Yeah. So, again, as an administrator, since 2017, the state has wanted schools to, there's definitely ed code. Let me be very clear. 48900 is the suspension ed code. And within 48900, there is, anti-bullying, suspendable offenses, and definitely whether it's hate speech, whether it's hitting or anything like that. There's definitely ed code to suspend.
Mm-hmm.
The little, however, there is that since 2017, the state really doesn't want schools to have a zero tolerance policy from the first offense. They want schools to use restorative practices. They want schools to use education to help students understand what they're doing wrong. And they don't want schools to, react quickly and just suspend right off the bat. And that's a whole bunch of offenses. When it comes to the big five, that's when administrators have the right per ed code to be able to recommend for not just suspension, but for possible expulsion. And the big five is
I don't know the big five.
right.
I'm kind of glad I don't know the big five, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, it's all right. It's not exactly, it's not the same big five as our safety plan, just to be clear on that. But basically, really harmful violence, having a weapon, selling drugs, sexual offense that occurred on campus or connected to school. I'm not sure if that's 4 or 5. I possibly would have to look up the last one, having a weapon, if I haven't said that already. Those have been very few and far between in my time in the district. Eloisa, you've had your hand up.
Yeah, this issue of racial offense has happened at Robert Down for a long time. And when it happened to somebody very close to me, and I was a witness, and we both went to the principal's office at the time, and we made formal complaints, and nothing ever happened. So it's very disheartening, and I hope that culture has gone away, and I hope that things do get done when that happens.
Well, again, why I said I wanted to, bring in a group. Again, I don't want to hide behind any kind of group. It's just to spark the conversation. And Valerie, I'm hearing you. Again, I don't want you to come to a meeting on June 1st to be able to take over and trying to remember what you were saying with your concern, but I just want you to be aware that the district is taking this very seriously. I think when it comes down to it, in retrospect, and when we move forward with the equity plan for next year and moving forward, the reaction to these kinds of things are going to be very clear cut. And yeah, I mean, again, I want to, I think a lot of times kids say things because they hear about it, they're watching TikTok, whatever it might be. And sometimes they don't understand what they're saying, and when the times that they do understand, that's when, the school district and me as an educator definitely needs to step in and make it very clear to them that they can't do this. And if it was a repeated pattern time and time again, and efforts were made to get this student to stop and they didn't, that's when we're talking about suspension now. And if it rose to the point where they are bullying or cyberbullying somebody, where he or she, if it's affecting that person so severely, then that student needs to be removed. I mean, the offender needs to be removed. And Laura, you had your hand up real quick.
This is more just personal comment, I guess. And my sort of reaction to what you just said is I'm thinking of the student that's having racial slurs thrown at them time and time and time again. And then it's time to suspend. That kid is traumatized. That's to allow that much space for somebody to assault another child that many times just seems really, it feels a little sickening to even think that. So, I mean, I don't know how many times is enough times to get suspended. I mean, I suppose maybe that's kind of like is there a black and white of it? There has to be sort of like a 3 strikes and you're out. I mean, holy smokes.
Yeah, well, let me share. So I needed to just pull up my suspension form because again, I don't suspend. I've had 1 suspension per year since I've been here.
Sometimes even the threat of suspension, like if I hear this again, you're out. I mean, I don't know, if I was a 4th grader doing that kind of thing and a principal looked me in my face and said, try that again, you're not going to go to the school for a while. I think I'd think twice. And then also maybe putting that kid immediately, start education now of what that means and not let the parents handle it. Because if it's coming to school, it's coming from home. I mean, that's just the black and white of it. It's that's what's happening. And so it's almost the school's responsibility to say like, okay, now we educate you. I mean,
yeah,
I don't know.
I think for some kids, and again, this goes back to my high school times. Some kids, for whatever offense it may have been, some of them didn't care. They wanted to be suspended. They didn't want to be at school. And that honestly, it didn't work because they were suspended time and time again, and they didn't learn from their mistakes. It was when we really.
Sorry, someone needs to mute their microphone. It's interfering with you, Mr. Keller.
I have my window open, so it might be. Let me shut my window. Hold on. All right, hopefully that's better. Yeah, so again, I wanted to just be very clear on the Big 5 mandatory recommendation for not just suspension, but expulsion. And that's sale, possession, or furnishing a firearm brandishing a knife at another person, selling a controlled substance, sexual assault or sexual battery, and possession of an explosive. Those are the big five. I don't have, as an administrator, if they're in third grade or above, I don't have a choice but to recommend to the Board of Education, if there's proof of this offense, that I must recommend for expulsion. And basically that's like a hearing where the board is the jury and they determine whether or not the student's going to stay in the district or not. For discretionary mandatory recommendations for expulsion, and these are, again, kind of put on the onus of the administrator. Those offenses are causing serious injury to another person, except in self-defense, possession of a knife or other dangerous object for no reasonable use to the pupil, unlawful possession of any controlled substance except for the first offense for the possession of not more than one adverbius, I don't say that word, sorry, it's SAT word for sure, one whatever ounce of marijuana other than concentrated cannabis, over-the-counter medications or prescribed medication, robbery or extortion, and the last one being assault or battery on any school employee. So those are the either mandatory or discretionary mandatory recommendation for expulsions. There are a lot of other, what they call 48,900 offenses. Bullying is a part of that. Cyberbullying is a part of that. And quite frankly, again, you would have to have a very long list of offenses for myself, or if it was something that started in elementary school that continued into the middle school and possibly into the high school, where there would have to be all these offenses that an administrator would have to take forward to the board and recommend for expulsion to leave the district.
What about just suspension though? I mean, just in talking on the elementary school level, I mean, these kids, I would be shocked if there was a kid in elementary school that was like, I don't want to be here, suspend me anyway. That, I mean, that's a whole nother set of issues.
Yeah, I've met those kids, trust me.
Oh, I'm sure they're out there, but I mean, you know, just sort of as an in general, you know, can we set a bar here that says like 0? Or if it happens, then this is addressed and it's addressed immediately and it's addressed head on and it is nipped immediately. And if it happens again, suspension. Robert Down does not tolerate that. I mean, this is something that you almost have to put the hammer down on, because if a kid is learning that from home and he thinks that he can come into his school community and do that to another child, I mean, I feel like there should be a repercussion. That's a big thing that they're doing and they need to understand it. And maybe the way that they would understand that is through education and then suspension. I mean, I just think that's that's a serious offense.
So, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
Oh, please.
I totally agree with you, Laura, but just to like, from the other side, if that is coming from home and they're suspended because of that, I wonder what conversations would be happening at home and how, if that behavior would end up being reinforced or changed, or if it would then turn into you know, your school shouldn't have sent you home, or, you know, I mean, if it's coming from home, then is that decision going to be supported? So then where is the best placement from there? I agree, it's a very serious offense and it should be dealt with very seriously, but then is the best decision to send them home where that might just be fostered more, or is the best decision to then, I mean, I don't know if you could do like an in-school type thing where they miss out on something, but you're having those conversations and that teaching of why that is wrong and how that could offend others, and then making it better from there. What can we do to help this child now that we've, you know, done this traumatic thing? You know, just something else to kind of think about.
I think that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, right? Like, we educate our students, we give them their tools, but we also have to educate them in the manner that they go back home and they have to have a way to educate parents as well that it's not accepted, right? And I understand the caution of, or the reasons why California is saying, you know, we don't want to suspend, but at the same time, you have other children on the other end of this being basically abused, because that's what's happening, right? I mean, you know, and literally, you know, on the basis of their race. That is mentally destructive, emotionally destructive. And so what are we going to do to protect those children also? Because it's almost like what we're saying is we're going to protect the offender more than we are protecting the child that is being harmed. But I also think
I didn't mean for.
that's why it's important to push the district more as well, because this is a culture. It's not just at Robert Down. This is a culture that's going around at our schools. And so we need to find a way to tackle this.
Yes, I agree with you 100%. I know it's extreme and it's traumatic. It's traumatic for anybody that's on that receiving end. So I definitely agree with that.
Erin Myers, you've had your hand up.
Yeah, and again, I'm not a member of the council, so I don't want to speak out of turn, but as I listen, it occurs to me there are maybe 3 ways we want to think about this. I think, you know, one, we want to think about the, you know, who are the children who are impacted and what is the level of support and processing and checking in of, you know, those kids who have been the victims of these actions. I think then there's, you know, what we've been talking a lot about is how do we deal with these severe instances, but there we're talking about sort of response to discrete actions, right? And then I think, you know, where we spoke a little bit about is how do we help prevent this? How do we help the student body and those children's individually and collectively to understand racism, to understand structural oppression, to understand sort of history and the trajectory of history and how that plays out in the present, and how to have those conversations about really complex issues of inequity in sort of the present, and so that they can understand, you know, how to be a good citizen, but also understand, you know, how to be a bystander and how to step in and be supportive of their peers when these things happen, and even understand how to process these issues that come up, whether they have to do with, you know, in the news and far away, or they have to do with, you know, the Carmel missions and here. And so I just wonder a little bit if those are on sort of 3 different tracks, because Sean, you made a really good point that, you know, you're constrained by, you have to work within certain guardrails that are provided for you with respect to where you have discretion and where you don't. But I think ideally, you know, we're not in the place of just responding to bad problems. We're in the place of really supporting the larger student body to be better citizens and to support those who, you know, are victims of these incidents, whether they're in school or out of school. So that's just, you know, a bit of an observation, and just, you know, I think there might be separate tracks to these.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Sean, has there ever been, sorry, I know that the meeting's long, like an in-school suspension type thing that you can do? I mean.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. For students, again, that most of the time, it's the ones that just are repeat offenders for blank, you know, has to be older. You cannot, in the state of California, you cannot suspend a student who's in kindergarten, 1st or 2nd grade, period. 5th, you know, 3rd through 5th, you know, if it's an offense that they are continually doing, and it's breaking 48,900, you know, because the other piece of this is, let me look, I want to make sure I'm kidding. I used to be able to just say these things when I was at the high school because I was suspending kids so much. I knew 48900 so well. But when a student is disruptive in any kind of way, that's K, 48900K. And a lot of schools are using that to get rid of kids who just mouthed off to them, like, you need to do this. I'm not doing that. They say, oh, really? You're not doing that? Well, guess what? You're suspended. You're going home. And that's where the state came in and said, whoa, hold on, everybody. You're kind of abusing 48900K. Something that I purchased was Don't Suspend Me. And that was recommended to us. I don't know if any of you know, Jeannie DiTomaso. She's a retired teacher over at Forest Grove. She recommended that to both Buck and I as principals. And so I read that my first year. And it's from Sanger Unified. And it has a lot of great techniques in trying to help students understand what they've done wrong and to educate them to have, a different piece instead of, as an alternative to suspension. And that's what I've tried to do here at Robert Down. And again, I can't reveal what I do with those students to families because that's private, information. It's private for me to even say that I've suspended a student to anybody. That has to do with, ed code as well and just California law. So I think but this could be another piece of parental education to help everyone understand, here are the alternatives that we use as a school. And when something comes up that I think most of us would think would be zero tolerance, what would be my reaction as a principal? And if that offense continually happened and caused trauma for students, what's the next step? I think that's a big piece of helping parents understand.
I have a comment. Makes me think like if we can't understand racism and differences if we don't talk about it. And I think in some of our past conversations that we've had about like the diversify and talking about bringing in these new books, like what Zara did with Miss Kelly's class and the whole Ramadan and bringing all those books there, we're talking about how people are different and different cultures, but are we making sure in all of those lessons that we're not focusing on the differences, but we are focusing on the similarities and always kind of trying to make our lessons be a full circle? And we're not talking about Ramadan and how it's different than, another holiday or what another nationality might do, but are we talking about how they're similar and making sure that our lessons have that message at the end of how we're the same? I know that, with COVID and stuff, I didn't get to do my Bloomer lunch bunch here. And when I hear all the racism stuff, we come across it all the time, just as we walk our kids down the hall with the kids with disabilities. Oh, those are that's the baby class. That's the kids whose brains are broken or the ones that are in diapers or, things like that. And me and my staff, we always stop and go, excuse me, like, let me give you a quick lesson on this. That's not how it is. And so with disabilities is the same thing, not just race or nationalities and stuff. And I know in the beginning of the year, I sent out videos to those connection classrooms that my students were going to be in on like what is autism or what is Down syndrome and how to talk about it. But I'm not sure how those teachers use that lesson in that video to describe those differences or similarities with those classes, or did they just show the video on the differences, but they didn't do the activity on the similarities or what we have in common with these kids? And so I know that starting next year, I'm going to do a better job at that. And like the videos that I supply to the classrooms and the lessons. And I never went back to find out, did those teachers do the lesson or did they just show the video? But it's the same idea of like, did it make a full circle? Not that we're just showing how these students are different, but how they are similar to us. And doing activities of like, stand up if your favorite food is pizza, stand up and realize, wow, look at all of you who stood up, to the same things as like, you know, maybe one of my students, Johnny, stood up, and realizing how many things you have in common with the student. The other thing that it makes me think of is when I did my Bloomer Lunch Club, my lunch bunch in the years past, you know, we'd have it be like a sign up list. And I found that it was the same kind of kids who came to my classroom, and they were already the kids who had like that sympathy, who wanted to know more, and you know, they wanted to be that little teacher. And so how do we get those other kids in here who are kind of have the ooh factor, or who are like, oh, those are the babies, and not to give it to them as punishment, but you know, it's just being like, maybe it's in-house suspension, but you know, this week you're going to do lunch at Bloomer's Lunch Club. You know, and it's just kind of like Saturday school, but it's pushing that student into a situation that he would have never signed up for. And, you know, I know us as teachers, sometimes we say, get in partners, you know, find a buddy to do things, but our teachers purposely putting students together to make sure different students are working together, so they do get to know that student that they never work with. And maybe just us as teachers, we can do a better job at that, of how we pair students and making sure that the same students aren't getting together. And I don't know, it's just some thought, but it's just making me think of how I can do things differently with the discrimination that we see day to day with the kids with the disabilities that we work with here. Anyways,
I wanted to just let everybody know in the chat, I'm putting a link to the district's discipline matrix right now. So please check that out. Several of you were asking, you know, is there any kind of document that administrators need to follow? And this is the one that we adopted a couple of years ago.
I have a quick comment or question. I know we're really over, but for example, you know, when Patty's sending things to kids' classrooms, those kids will see that and then come home to their parents and want to further the conversation. And I feel like a lot of parents might not have the language or the understanding of how to further that conversation. And this doesn't hit with just disabilities, but with anything. So I think that sometimes I wish I had access to what my kids are being shown in at school. Not that I want to see everything, but you know, if there is like a certain, I think just sending that home, and whether parents are going to see it or not, but I know that I have parent peers that don't know how to broach subjects when kids come to them from more a medical standpoint. And so I'll try to give them language, but I think that giving parents language and sort of so they can continue that education piece at home, and it would also educate the parents. So that might be something that could be folded into how it's presented.
Eloise, you've had your hand up.
Yeah, I wouldn't want kids to be sent to Miss Bloomer's class as a punishment. I don't want them to associate that to punishment, because being in her class is not a punishment. So I want them to be aware of her class and be educated about what goes on in special ed class, but I don't think it's a good idea that punishment, that going to her class is a form of punishment.
No, I wouldn't want it to be a punishment either, but I'm just saying that when I have a sign up list, it's the same, you know, dozen kids that are coming to my classroom. And it's how do we get the kids who kind of need to kind of, for their eyes to be open, you know, to come in and it is, you know, maybe it's not, I don't know. I don't want it to be a punishment either, but it's like, how do we get other kids in here to kind of see it for themselves, to have an understanding? Because if they're not going to sign up on their own to be a part of like Lunch Bunch, then how do you get a child in here to kind of to start asking questions or to start understanding? So
Maybe
I don't want it to be a punishment either, but that's kind of what I was going towards.
Yeah,
Was
but maybe
how do we get another?
Maybe there should be like different kinds of lunch bunch, not on your class, but other things. And every kid has to participate in the lunch bunch at least once a year. You know, you have to sit with a kid that you've never sat with before. Then you get some kind of mark that you did your lunch bunch thing. Or you have to go to have lunch at Miss Bloomer's class. So you have something that shows an insignia or whatever that shows that you've been there. You have to help clean out the school, like whatever things that, so you motivate. So then every kid's gonna have to go, not just always the same ones.
Oh, that's actually a really interesting idea, actually, because I know that like I'm in 4 classrooms a week at school, specifically reading about diverse, cultures and people, right? And that's great. And I love it. And I do think it helps. I think some of the kids get used to seeing me, right? And they identify me with the boys' mom and you're Clifton's mom or whatever. So I think that helps. But at the same time, that's only 4 classrooms, right? Like there are all these other classrooms that maybe those teachers have not opted into that, right? So how do we reach those kids? So maybe a lunchtime reading or a lunchtime activity, right? That's, based around diversity, whether that be race or disabilities, right? Or something different, but where it's celebrated, right? Because I know that every time I read something, I always try to come back to at the end how, yes, this culture is different, but when you really look at it, it's the same. We're the same. So I think that's a good idea, Eloisa. Laura Smith?
I also wonder, as assemblies come back, and especially if we can make them student-led, I mean, this is something that could be kind of addressed, just diversity, different read alouds. You could have a student reading a book. You could have, like little video snapshots, especially if you make it in a digital format or Google Slides. That can also be addressed there and then shared with families. And there can be questions in there, little, activities in there that they could do at home. But having it just be addressed school wide, making it something like we're doing this. This is something we're doing, and we are, educating ourselves as a whole. Make it something like we're proud of this. I don't know. I think that with assemblies, a lot can be, put in there. Also, Patty, I do wonder, it would take a lot of buy-in from the staff, but you could almost do like on, the first Monday of the month is this school or this classroom's day, and the teachers could just select 2 people, like you get to go be lunch bunch today, make it really exciting, so they look forward to doing that. That's something that could be done too.
I'm writing down.
Is your hand up again, or is that from the first time? Oh, I think it maybe was from the last time. Okay. Those are really good ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. I've written a lot of them down as everyone was talking. So thank you. I absolutely love the idea of lunch bunch having different focuses. So no offense to you, Patty, but I think that's something that we can expand, throughout the campus, and definitely have different topics and different cultures represented for diversity. I think it's a great idea.
Somebody put in the chat like a passport or like a merit badge. And, I almost saw like a little laminated passport that might have like 6 little areas that could be punched out. And it was just like, you get some special award at the end of the school year when you've like, fulfilled your diversity, passport. And that's like participating in a lunch bunch, or, learning about a new nationality, or playing with somebody new that you would have never played with, or something, and just diversifying themselves, and they earn the little punch out, as they do those tasks. And
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, this is beautiful. Because I'll tell you, last year and thank you everyone for staying this late. But last year, I think there was a much smaller group of parents and myself who were trying to create the SIPSA. And there was the recommendation to have the SEL lunchtime activities, but besides art, we're trying to think, what else can we do? And that's why it's important for us to have these discussions, to have some great ideas come up. So thank you. Passport Harvard. I like it, Eloisa.
So I think that, is there anything else? I think that actually.
Yeah, I had my hand raised. I had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Eric. Go ahead.
Yeah, no
Sorry.
problem. I'm wondering in the past, has there ever been a diversity night or an event where, different cultures, and I'm speaking because back in Maryland at Aaron's school, they had a night where people would bring food or they would educate with a map of like where their families are from. 'Cause I think sharing food is something that, is pretty amazing that we all have in common. Um, as just a way to also discuss things. But I don't know if you guys have done that in the past or COVID shut that down.
Sorry.
I don't think that, well, it hasn't been done since I got here in 2019, but I did speak with Lucy Hazen from PTA, and that is something that we are trying to look into for the future, especially hopefully COVID gets better at, working alongside the PTA and actually putting on something like this. And not only just for Robert Down, but also to include Forest Grove so that we can actually have a night like this and you come out and everybody can celebrate, their heritage, and we do that and make food the focus, right? And then maybe we can, center it around some other things. So that is something that we're in the works of trying to talk about. Maybe that's something we'll talk more about over the summer, as a matter of fact, and then
Yeah,
bring to the
great.
table in the fall. Mhm.
Yeah, because the other thing is we also share different music or even some cultural dress, things like that, just to, broaden everyone's perspective on things.
Agreed. And the kids take to it. I think last week was the ending of Ramadan, and of course some cultures also ended with Eid. So I think we showed it in 5 classrooms last week, American Eid, which is a short Disney Plus film, and the kids really took to that. And I thought it was really important to show those parallels between maybe what one religion does or one culture does, right, and compare that to Christianity or something else. So the kids do take to it. It won't solve everything, right? Because a lot of times our communities are just small versions of America, but it's something that we can work towards.
All right. Well, I definitely put in for goal number 2, the addition of the diversity passport for Lunch Bunch, and also to have diversity night. And I think it would be really great for the kids to have some kind of, if you want to call it a passport, to try to have them visit the different cultures that are represented, and also to give them some kind of incentive for visiting and sharing what they've learned. And I think after that, to follow up and not just have that night and celebration with food, but to follow up and to have the kids share what they've learned with the students in the class, for just in case if kids couldn't make it, or obviously through a lunch bunch gathering, and have them share through that fashion too.
Okay, I think, is there anything else that we want to bring up about this specific topic right now? If not, I think we'll set the future agenda items. So Mr. Keller, we will go ahead. So next Monday on the 16th, it'll be like a merger of the Leadership Council and Site Council, right? So that we can get through the SIPSA.
Yeah, that's my hope.
Okay.
I definitely, and I'm glad Stephen's still here, because it's my goal to have his voice, as I told him at the beginning, to have his voice for parents of English language learners, and to bring in our leadership team as the site leadership team to have their voice on the SIPSA as well. And then obviously from us, as the site team. And again, don't want anything hidden. I want to be very open about what the plan is for next year. Want to make sure that we provide the dollars towards these goals so they can be accomplished. And again, I'll try to get goal 2 out to you guys tonight or early tomorrow morning. I know I keep promising these things, but I definitely want to get them in your hands so you can read them, so we could talk about them. So I think just like what we had here, I don't want to take too much time away from next week's meeting to have some more brainstorming. So if you have any questions or concerns, please send them through email to everyone. And we can have an email chain, and I'll make changes, and I can update everybody and try to send, updated drafts. And yeah, I thank you for the conversation tonight. It's important. I really feel that way. And, it's going to take tough conversations to get things changed, and I want those changes to occur. I want to be very clear with all of you that I want that to happen. So just like our kids need to learn and grow, we as adults can learn and grow as well.
Okay, so future agenda items right now is just going to be, okay, wait a minute. So we're gonna focus on pushing the nut-free or nut policy to the school board, right? That's the first thing that we'll address. And Mr. Keller do I need to create an agenda for Monday's meeting, or is that something that we just, those of us on the site council who will participate in that, just show up to the leadership meeting and you send us a link? How does that work?
Well, let's have it be an official site council.
Okay,
Let's, because we need to let everybody know that we didn't approve the SIPSA tonight.
got it.
And
Okay,
that we needed more, at least an additional week, and that our leadership team will be a part of that. Yeah, and I'm hoping there'll be a moment for us as a leadership team, to discuss things about the school in general, because I'll be addressing, my hope again, to address the staff on the 19th with the SIPSA, with all the goals. Because especially about the professional development, want to make sure. But just to have it on record, I will, again, for the nut policy, I will contact Dr. Porras and Nurse Powley, and I will ask them if we can get this on a board agenda to discuss the possibility, or if there's something, if they allow me as the principal to adopt a policy for next year, school-wide. Secondly, you asked, of course, my brain is freezing right now. For June 1st, I will reach out to Director Silva and see if parents can be invited to the equity meeting at the high school. And because I know they had to pay the group that's working with us, there was a fee for each person. But let me find out if somebody can replace somebody else who can't make it, because it is the summer. So, but again, I will ask her if we can extend invitations to parents.
okay, that would be great. Okay, perfect. Okay, so that being said, I'd like to go ahead and call the order for the meeting to be adjourned. I'll make that motion. Do I have a second? Seconded by Brittany Brubaker. Do we have any discussion? Are we all good? Make sure I don't see any hands up. Okay, all right, so motion is passed. The meeting is over at 5:36 p.m. on Monday, May 9th. Thank you, everyone. Have a really great night, and I hope to see a lot of us next week.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, good night.
Bye-bye.
Okay, good night.